Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Tom Murray, the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, a project of All for Ed located in Washington, D.C. Future Ready Schools is a collaboration between All for Ed and a vast coalition of over 60 national and regional partner organizations. The goal of Future Ready Schools is to maximize learning opportunities for all students and to help school districts move quickly towards student-centered learning. The effort provides educators with resources and support to ensure that local strategic and technology plans align with instructional best practices, are implemented by highly trained teachers, and maximize personal and authentic learning experiences for all students, particularly those from historically underserved communities. As always, the hashtag for today's webinar is Future Ready. Thank you for making an investment in your time and for joining us today. I'm going to be your host on this webinar on preventing analysis paralysis, practical ways to share student success. And joining us for today's event, we are so excited to have Oscar Rodriguez, the new Chief Technology Officer in Austin ISD in Texas, John Hurley, the new Interim Executive Director for Information Systems, also in Austin ISD, Phil Emmer. Phil's the Principal K-12 Business Development Manager at Amazon Web Services, one of our great partners, and John Parker, the VP of Data Science and Research at Enive. And so let's take a moment, if we could, just quick introductions. Let's start with you, Oscar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oscar Rodriguez. I'm the new Chief Technology Officer here for Austin ISD.
Awesome. How about John Hurley?
Hi, everybody. New Interim Executive Director of Information Systems here at Austin ISD. Happy to be here, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us for you both. And let's jump over to Phil.
Hey there, Phil Emmer with Amazon Web Services. I'm a Business Development Manager in our K-12 vertical practice.
Great to have you here, Phil. Thanks so much. And John Parker.
Hi, I'm John Parker. I'm happy to be here. I'm VP of Data Science at Enive.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the four of you joining us for this great webinar today. Lots of good conversation coming your way if you're listening. So thank you for each of us for joining today. I'm excited to have this important conversation. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Oscar, we're going to start with you. One of the things I want to talk a little bit about is this: as the CTO in Austin ISD, you've been tasked with leading the work, and we're going to be highlighting today. It's a project that grew out of a need that I'm guessing many district leaders tuning in today can really relate to. Walk us through, if you would, your team's journey over the past year plus, and how the work that we're going to be discussing came about.
Sure. So as many leaders can talk to and experience, there's a lot of changes and pressures on technology and school systems. Especially with the need for efficiency, from a fiscal perspective, the need to provide more services, better services, more uptime. And so those external pressures sort of created an opportunity here within Austin to reconceptualize our systems and really look at how we're leveraging our technology. So as you alluded to your introduction, really focusing on the student outcomes. And so part of our philosophy here is ultimately school districts are not measured by their technology or their infrastructure or any of those technical affordances. We're measured by our student outcomes. And so with all of the changes here in Austin, we took a look at our systems, took a step back, and really took the opportunity to reconceptualize what we wanted the future for technology to be here in Austin ISD.
Well, thanks so much, Oscar. Let's jump over to you if we could. As the Executive Director for Enterprise Applications, you've worked through these shifts to the cloud, yet many district technology departments are placing very similar hardware orders as they were 10 years ago. So talk to us about how shifting operations to the cloud has benefited student learning in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Oscar's talking, as we do this, transformation and digital transformation in Austin, we see a shift in our core competency is educational technology and really providing what the student needs to really, we like to say technology is like the rocket fuel for education, right? We form that foundation for them. We're getting away from, going to the data center, changing hard drives, installing physical equipment, installing all the fiber optics. We want to leave that to the experts like AWS and Anive. We want to empower them to provide those services to us. So we see a big shift there. And we really, as technology becomes such a foundation for learning in the classroom, we want to provide that same experience to our students, regardless of where they are. Our hashtag around here in IT is, hash AISD anywhere. We want that same experience to be, remote, at home, in the classroom, and even at grandma's house on the weekend. If you have to do some homework, you have to work on something. So the cloud has certainly helped us enable that, because it gives us that standard access regardless of where we are. You don't want to have students on VPN connections and all that kind of stuff. Those are kind of a thing of the past for us, where we're providing all those services. And we want to shift our support and our staff to providing that experience for the kids and supporting that experience for learning, and not have a lot of staff that's focused on the operational hardware support and going to the data center and changing out equipment. So that's been a great shift for us. One thing that I've seen even in my own kids as they go to school here is that with AISD Anywhere, you're not stuck in the evenings anymore. So my daughter, we were at the grocery store. She was a little distraught because she had an algebra question. Well, she had gotten on her mobile device and on the learning management system that's, software as a service, cloud hosted. She could access it from anywhere she was. She posed a question to her teacher about her algebra homework. Well, in the middle of the aisle at Texas is we love our HEB. That's our local grocery store. So we were in HEB, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" She said, "Hey, my teacher just responded to me on the mobile device, and I'm able to finish my homework tonight, and I understand the example in algebra now." So just things like that we want it to be ubiquitous, right? We want that experience to be available for the students and the teachers, regardless of where they are.
Absolutely. And to make sure that it's not a roadblock and slowing us down and not getting in the way. I love that story. And I also love, because we know like our own children will tell us the truth, right? They're not going to be sugarcoating it. So great connection there that had to make you feel good in that regard. So Phil, I want to jump over to you, because as our partner with AWS, as leading the K-12 vertical team, one of the things, you get to see more of a national view. You get to see where districts are working in this area, where they're really struggling. You're often coming in to help solve some of the issues that we have. And so talk to us a little about what John talked to us about, which is imperative, especially as we merge from the pandemic. So talk to us about what you're seeing nationally in this area with the cloud, and where districts are struggling and all that moving forward.
Sure, thanks. So I'm glad John mentioned his daughter bringing up an LMS on the on her phone, because I think it brings up an important point. So through the pandemic, the learning management system became kind of the core connection, right, between really the teachers, the students, the parents. It was always there for that, but in the pandemic, the role became expanded, and it turns out it, generally speaking, always worked. It worked when the number of users grew. It worked when the amount of time they were on grew. When the weekends, weekdays after 4 o'clock, before 8 o'clock, all of that happened. And for the most part, all the major learning management systems out there run on a cloud, right? Whether it's Blackboard or Canvas or Schoology, right? Desire to Learn, all of these learning management systems are built on top of AWS, which is built to be elastic, right? And so it solves those problems. The reason I think it's important here is because whether it's a teacher, a parent, or a student, they've all now become accustomed to that. They want all the applications to work that way, whether it's the student information system, an assessment platform, some sort of content platform. Everything is expected to work like that. It just works. After hours, it expands to the usage. So that's sort of one thing that we see a lot, right? So I've seen districts that were perhaps less likely to move some of their infrastructure out of their server environment or their data center, that have said, look, we simply can't manage our pieces of infrastructure and servers and services the same way that the sort of born in the cloud, built for the cloud have. So let's sort of move that. Let's transition that over to folks that do it every day. The other thing I'm seeing, and I know we're talking a little bit about data today, is it is all the districts, superintendents, leadership teams, teachers, parents, students, they all want answers to questions. They want answers to questions quickly. And so some school districts, right, have built, large data warehouses over the years, with sophisticated extract, transform, load environments. And yet they're coming to us saying, we built all of this and it's simply not keeping up. It's not keeping up because of a number of things. Either we built it 5 years ago and the data is now different. We're now incorporating data sets that are things like, school out of school connectivity, right? Usage statistics from the learning management system, which are now tantamount to engagement measures, right? And attendance measures. So there are all sorts of new data elements that are either already not there, or there's not a data standard that wraps them, or it's simply that we need the question quickly. I hear lots of data folks, accountability folks, and IT folks in school districts tell me, look, we're getting beat up out the head and shoulders by leadership, by our superintendent, by our board, because they're asking us questions and expecting to get an answer in a week or a day or maybe 2 days. And we're telling them it might take 2 months or 3 months because we have to build some level of custom infrastructure to do it. And because of ESSER funds and the requirements for reporting, there are just more and more expectations on having data at your fingertips, being able to determine insights from that data, and then making that data available to ever who needs it with the proper data, with the proper security and privacy restrictions. And it's not simple to do that, right? And so AWS has a ton of tools to do that. And Ive and John Parker have a ton of expertise in how to curate it and make it available and useful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And we're going to dive further into that in just a moment. But I do want to pause to remind everyone that the hashtag for today's event, as always, is Future Ready. So, Oscar, I want to jump back over to you. We mentioned Austin ISD, but if you could give us a little bit about even the demographics, numbers of students, because as we start to talk about data, the scale here is important. You're not a small, tiny district, and even there, it can be overwhelming. So tell us a little bit about the district, if you could. But then here's the other piece. It really is no secret that districts are collecting massive amounts of data, right? And your team has a vision around, and I love this, how you group it together, standards, governance, and ownership. And so then I want you to talk to us about the team's core competencies there and how, as I've heard you say, part of your job is getting to the truth of the district. So tell us a little bit about Austin in terms of numbers and how large in size, and then dive into that around standards, governance, ownership, and the truth of the district, if you would.
Sure, no problem. So Austin as a district is currently close to 75,000 students, about 113 campuses. So it's, I would say, probably top 10 in terms of districts here in Texas. And with that scale of operations, I think we have about 5,000 to 6,000 teachers, another 5,000 to 6,000 additional personnel. I think from a contextual, we're about the 7th largest employer here in the city of Austin. So large operation, large pieces, very broad in scope. And so given the current reality of where we are, data plays a significant role. And so part of our vision is focusing on, and I think the conversations are sort of alluding to that, the aspect of operationalizing our data governance, as opposed to data management. I think that's sort of one of the key sort of frameworks of, in terms of focusing on core competencies, data management, as technology begins to grow, especially in a school district, is becoming more of a challenge with all of the costs and all of the competing aspects, especially in the sort of environment that we are with school funding. Now, as far as the governance and the standards and the ownership, really looking with our stakeholders internally to see what is the truth of the district. So as was alluded to by Phil, it's not a question of whether our executive leadership is going to ask for data. It's a matter of when. And so being sort of proactive and moving from a push rather than a pull strategy. I already know that the superintendent at any moment is going to ask all sorts of questions around frameworks or methodologies and data sets that are not necessarily all nicely aggregated. So knowing that that's the reality, knowing that the expectation of delivering that sort of in a lean and agile methodology has really focused us internally to say, okay, what are the core competencies from a technology perspective? And again, what are the district core competencies in terms of student outcomes? And so that's what's sort of pushed us to begin discussing standards. And one example that we can think of is leveraging the EdFi data model, leveraging the one roster to be able to quickly, as the data changes, spin up and make sure that students have the right access, especially as we've discussed how critical the LMS and having access to those tools can be. The other aspect is just internally, how do we operationalize some of the different data that's used, enrollment data, attendance data, student discipline data, and really working with the internal stakeholders to take ownership of that data so that they understand that ultimately whatever is in the data, from an accuracy or quality or validity, that's going to come from the data owners. IT is not in a position to say, yes, the student discipline data is correct or not. That's going to be up to the data owners. Same thing with enrollment, same thing with attendance. So we're looking to facilitate that through a standard process, through district-wide governance to make sure that all pieces of the organization understand the truth of some of that data, because I think with such a large organization and enterprise, silos are very easy to create, develop and create and maintain, but it doesn't really work in terms of what is the whole picture for the district. So we've really been working and engaging our executive stakeholders, cabinet, down to our functional leaders to say, okay, you are the data owners. Technology is here to support whatever that usage of the data or however you want to operationalize the data, especially leveraging a data warehouse and maybe even looking into implementing visualizations to help further communicate what is the reality of the district, not just internally, but also externally to our community, our trustees, and all of the stakeholders that are engaged with public education today.
Yeah, for sure. And I can hear the other CTOs that are watching this, like cheering you on as like, this guy gets my world. He understands what it's like needing this and to query that. And so thank you for speaking some truth into that, but also the way you're trying to model it there in Austin. An incredible story coming out of your district and the work that you're leading. Oscar, I want to dive a little bit deeper because your team chose to partner with Anive, a data innovation company that works with hundreds of districts around the nation to help users visualize all the relevant data in real time. And talk to us a little about what you want your school community to be able to do and why partnering with them is bringing this to life. And then we're going to hear from John, who works there. So let's Oscar, talk to us a little about that if you could.
Of course. So as part of our data journey, we want to focus on leveraging the data to change student outcomes, not necessarily managing the day-to-day with the data. And doing so in a way that's cost effective, that's scalable, that's secure, all of those things that ultimately are not sort of the core competency of where school districts are measured or compete. And so when we were thinking through what our approach was going to be and thinking through how we wanted to model that, we looked to partner with Anive and seeing some of the work that they had done with larger organizations and see the work that they had done to bring that data to reality and be able to communicate that to their stakeholders. So when we saw that, we knew that was the direction that we wanted to head. We knew that they understood our reality of having to do so much more with so much less, and found them to be a great partner.
Awesome. So, John, let's go over to you. They're singing your praises there, John, at Anive. You've been problem solving some significant data issues for some of the largest districts in the country and smaller ones too. But talk to us, if you could, about what you're seeing districts struggle with nationally and how these issues are also being remedied. So I gave you a shout out. Talk to us about what you're seeing nationally, if we could.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. And I will shout out really to Oscar and John. It's been excellent really working with Austin. And And really their vision is so well articulated. I mean, that's kind of drives everything they do. So it's amazing. Okay. But if you really look at probably Austin's problem and probably everybody else's problem, it's really disconnected and siloed data. Okay. There's tons of data every place, right? But the bottom line is it stays in these silos. Okay. And you have to kind of pull it out of silos. If you take some specific examples, let's just take one. Okay. Linking data to strategy. Okay. Everybody, new superintendents come in and they bring in a strategic plan, right? And the first thing they want is they really want data that really supports their strategy so they can really measure how much progress they made. Okay. Even at the school level, we have these things called school improvement plans. And every district has them, but I have been through district after district after district, and they do nothing but just kind of just sit on the shelf, okay? Because there's really not like good data to support them. Okay, even moving further, one of the big things we're into now because of COVID and really I'll say learning loss and the need for learning acceleration, just to be politically correct. Generally, there's a lot of out of classroom interventions that occur. Okay, these out of classroom interventions, usually they're related to academics. They could also be related to, even attendance and behavior. Okay. But the problem is, okay, these out of classroom interventions, they're really not connected well back to classroom instruction. So they're just simply not as effective as they need to be. So again, this is another example just of disconnected data. Okay, we have data really on both, on the interventions, we have data on classroom instructions. We really just don't link that together. And of course, like at Austin, that's one of the things we're planning on doing is really being able to tie together a lot of that data. Other big examples is, Austin has a very well-established learning management system that they've had for some time. So it's really the ability to be able to take formative data from there, as well as other sources like ed tech tools or whatever, pull all that together to really make better use of formative data, really to be able to support student outcomes. And then kind of last but not least, it's really just the ability to, we have these student outcomes, okay? And usually we measure student outcomes on how well did a student do in terms of state assessments. That's just, in Texas, we basically have, our Texas state exam. Other states we might use SBAC or whatever, but that's really how we measure things. However, that's really not enough, right? There's a lot of causes, that really cause, why those ratings are not as high as they need to be. So you really need to link it back to, maybe if attendance is an issue, looking at attendance and state assessment scores together. Okay, looking at classroom instruction, even looking at the quality of teachers and principals and linking all that together. So it's really the ability of being able to take, these rather siloed, disconnected data systems, for instance, looking at teacher and principal evaluations, that usually comes from HR. So it's being able to take that data, but link it back to student outcomes and growth, really, taken from state assessments. And that's the real key. And that's really the real focus we're seeing. It's just this disconnected data every place. And I mean, Oscar and John, they can definitely attest to that but that's what I'm saying at almost every other district across the country.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that and for your insight. And I can hear places saying, yeah, I wish we could. I wish this over here actually talked to this over here and we could make that work or make some of those connections. So I also heard some folks doing that. I want to jump back over to the other John. John, in your response, it's so obvious that you're focused on that teaching and learning side and bringing the conversation back to student learning time and time again. Talk to us, if you would, about a problem of practice where the things we've discussed so far today have met the needs of educators that are working in your classroom in Austin.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing that I see is that we want a standardized experience, like we've said, regardless of whether you're in the classroom, you're at home, you're remote, or like I said, you're at grandma's house for the weekend. I want a standardized kind of ecosystem that is integrated well. And the way that we've done that at Austin really is to say, one, we're going to be a cloud first strategy so that we have these systems that operate the same, whether you're on our network or off the network or wherever you may be. And two, we've done it through identity. So really we see this kind of almost dotted line around our AISD environment that uses our identity system to piece everything together, all these different pieces, whether I'm hosting something in AWS, whether it's a different SaaS-based product somewhere else. Standardize the way that people access the tools they need. So in the classroom, that helps with learning time, that helps the teacher understand, hey, how do I get to the data I need? How do I get to the assessments that I need? How do I get to the ed tech tools that I need? And we want that in one standard place standard way. And we connect that all through our identity system or our identity provider. With that as well, we want as many self-service tools as possible. So if there's a problem in the classroom, regardless of where that student is, regardless of what campus that student is at, we want a standard way for the teacher to be able to handle a technical problem with self-service tools or tools in the classroom. Just something easy that people don't often think about is that it's sometimes hard for a third grader or fourth grader to remember a password, or they might lock themselves out of the system, right? Something that we kind of see as maybe a simple challenge in the business world. When you're talking about elementary students, we want to make that practice even easier. So allow the teacher to have those standard tools to unlock accounts, reset passwords. Even in the lower grades, we move into maybe the kid doesn't have a password. Through the identity system, let's provide that individualized experience in the learning management system by connecting it to a QR code badge or pictograph or something like that. So if, a kindergartner might not have a password, they might have, choose the pizza, then the ice cream, and then the bicycle, and that's, their kind of picture password. So we really want, again, as we transform our skills, we're looking at the experience. We're looking at how do we, one, as Oscar was saying, use standard experience across all platforms. How do we use data in a standard way to help kids in the classroom and provide that immediately to the teacher for feedback? And then how do we connect all these in a way that is easy to access, useful, and standard, regardless of where that student is in learning?
I love that, John. And when I was a CFO or CTO, I will tell you, one of my goals for our department was you are customer service. You are here to serve, right? And sometimes as you're speaking, I could hear educators like, yes, like they get it. They're here to serve us and support us, not be the roadblocks. And just hearing you say we want as much of that access as possible for our teachers and educators. And let's be real, with 75,000 students, you'd have a full-time person just resetting passwords all day as their job. So let's come up with some of the tools and let's come up with some of these things for efficiency. And also, we trust the educators with the lives of our kids. Let's trust them with some of these processes and give them opportunities to be able to support this stuff as well. So really, really well said. So John and Oscar, I have to ask the two of you here, there's probably folks that are watching this thinking, wow, they are really far ahead with some of the stuff they're doing with AWS and Anive, and you're doing great, great work. Let's vision out 3 to 5 years. Where do you go from here? What are some next steps? What are some things on your plates that you're saying, here's eventually where we want to be?
Yeah, you want to start that, Oscar?
Sure. So we're in the midst of sort of launching several new enterprise systems. So in terms of down the road, definitely see, I think one of the main goals is going to be around enrollment. So we're looking to unify the enrollment experience as another way to reduce those roadblocks. I'm sure everyone understands how critical enrollment is to the organization. And so, we look to be launching a new unified enrollment system built from a parent perspective that is easy to engage with, that is unified for that experience, to make sure that, for example, enrollment isn't one of those challenges that our parents face. Looking overall at our entire enterprise architecture, again, thinking of service, thinking of our end users, rather than architect our technology so that our users have to interface with our systems, looking at how we organize our systems around our users. So looking at what kinds of things we could do from a technology perspective to provide that simple, secure, standard experience from a user perspective, whether it's a student, a parent, or a staff member. And so that I would say is sort of one of our goals for the next 3 to 5 years. John, do you have?
Yeah, sure, Oscar. Yeah, I agree. Just focusing on the efficient implementation of these students and customer-focused systems, and allowing partners like AWS and like Anive, their core competencies are in, AWS. Come on, IT operations and security. AWS is the standard. Someone, at Anive, in terms of data architecture, data science, and analytics and visualization, they're the experts. So again and again, I think Oscar and I are working with our staff to realize, hey, our role is, to provide the governance, provide the initiatives, and provide the best practices to our district for the success of students, but to really manage and contract and provide the core competencies like that from third parties, and bringing in those contractors it's almost like a force multiplier. You bring up a great example of a tech company buying. How much did they buy the security company for? Multiple billions of dollars, and it's like AISD's core competency is not cybersecurity. It's not running a data center. It's not running a fiber optic network. We are not an ISP, but we are ed tech experts, and we know what those educators in the classroom need. So we want to bring in the experts and partner together with great people like AWS and IVE to provide those tools. So I think in 3 to 5 years, we're really going to see like almost a skill set evolution within the IT department of what does IT really look like. It's not me getting up at 2 a.m. and going to change a hard drive. I'll tell you that.
I love that. And I have to give kudos to everybody here on this webinar, because the amount of times you all have said the word student, the word educator, the word end user, it's all about that experience, regardless of who we're trying to serve. And so it's important for our technology leaders to recognize that if we're doing our job well, the end users can do what they need to do. And if we're not, or we're missing some of these systems and structures as mentioned, we can also, as technology, be severe roadblocks and get in the way ultimately of learning, and unable to do that. So kudos to you all with that. But unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we've got to wrap up here in just a few minutes. But before we wrap up, I do want to give each of you a moment to offer a piece of advice to our viewers, no matter where they are in this journey. Some of them might be seeing our data is a mess and we don't even know where to start or go, or you've got those like Austin ISD that are really leading the way and doing some incredible work. So John P., let's start with you. Give us some advice no matter where they are on their journey.
Sure. I'm actually going to even kind of use Austin as an example. One of the key things they did was really very much upfront. They defined a clear strategy for use of data in the district. Okay. And with that, I mean, they decided they're going to focus on, standardization. Okay. So, you have standardized, quality, timely data for everyone. You basically have clear ownership in terms of who owns the data. Okay. And the next thing is you actually have, effective policies really for governance. And I'd really recommend that every district, you may even start there, because that is the right place to start. Don't start on the technology, start there, and then find the technology and the partners to really be able to help you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Some good advice. Phil, let's jump over to you.
Sure. Thanks. So my message is don't settle. I feel like we really have technology to solve a great many problems, right? Don't settle for we don't have enough storage, or we don't have enough IT staff, or we don't have all the data we need in our data store. We can solve all of these problems, right? All of the major enterprises on the planet right now leverage lots and lots of services and infrastructure. And at the end of the day, right, at AWS, we're plumbing, right? We have really, really good plumbing. And we've got a tool or an elbow, right, or a piece of infrastructure or service that can really address virtually every problem. Now, sometimes you want to bring a partner in to help you do that, but the services are there. The infrastructure is there. And if they're not there, ask. They will be there, right? At AWS, 90% of our changes, of the things we add, of the new services come because customers ask for it, right? So I don't think folks should settle. And then just in the context of this conversation, think about, I can't name it or it'll talk back to me here, but voice assistants. We have one of those at Amazon, right? I imagine soon parents want to know, I get notifications about packages getting delivered and about something I searched for 6 years ago going on sale or something like that, right? It may be that parents get notifications on how their kid's doing on a particular assessment, or without having to ask even, right? Or the kids getting a notification because some of them actually want to know how they did on their last test, right? Or even recommendation engines, right? When you go on your e-commerce site, your favorite e-commerce site, you're getting lots of recommendations. Heck, your voice assistant is probably, on occasion giving you recommendations on what you might buy. And they're usually very accurate, almost scarily so, right? And so recommendation engines, when you look at the back end of that, the sort of machine learning elements of recommendation engines, there's no reason that can't be implemented as part of a data system that an IVE is building, or as part of a learning management system or something like that. So whether it's a recommendation engine that gets incorporated, leveraging voice assistants in a new way, all of those kinds of things are not 10 years away. They're happening right now, right? In almost every other enterprise, there's no reason why they shouldn't be happening in education. So don't settle. Ask your partners to provide them for you now.
Love that, Phil. And you're bursting my bubble though, because I have to say, when I log in and I'm getting recommendations for like travel to Bermuda, I look at it as like, this is just meant to be. This is a sign that I'm supposed to do it. I don't, just because I searched for it, I just it's too funny with that. Let's go over to Oscar and to John. Oscar, give us some advice. Talk to your tech director and CIO, CTO colleagues across the country.
Sure. So I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is the process of digital transformation is a process. It's not an event. And it is disruptive innovation. So you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable because standardization needs and wants. So definitely recommend engaging in conversations, having dialogues, knowing that you don't have the answers, and the answers may not necessarily be for you to provide. It could be a shared experience to say, well, what do we as an organization want the answers to be? Don't be afraid to iterate. I'm thinking of the lean startup, Eric Ries, right? So focus on the MVP. Know that this is going to be iterative work, but it's a shared process as a district and as an organization. So I would say that definitely engaging cross-functionally, little by little, piece by piece, you'll begin to build that momentum of those early adopters that understand and hear the value of the work that you're trying to bring through, and so start that process. So this is definitely many hands make light work. So engaging and knowing that it's going to take time, but starting is better than not starting at all.
Brilliantly said. John, bring us home.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing for us that we always talk about is focus on your core competencies. We are, educational IT. We're passionate about educational technology and providing what the classroom needs to fuel the education experience. And we're not a software development company. We're not a network architect company. We're not we don't create our own servers and systems. Don't be scared to find good partners and say, that's not our core competency. That's not what we're going to do. Amazon, one of Amazon's core competencies is running a state-of-the-art data center that's efficient, secure, and always available. That's not one of Austin ISD's core competencies, and we don't want it to be. So I think what's hard, and what Oscar has done such a great job with as CTO, is really pushing that down through the organization and saying, listen, we're going to change roles. We're going to change job descriptions. We're going to do things differently because that's not our core competency. We're going to focus on the classroom, the success of students, and educational technology, and we're going to partner with great people to provide those technical resources. And also even, that even goes into like data governance and ownership. You've done such a great job pushing that down to this is financial data. I don't know. You don't need to come to IT to get this financial report. Let's provide those tools to the people in finance that know that data and can create the views of the data that they need. No reason to come to IT for that. So really defining what services you offer as an educational IT shop, and then partnering with others to provide those other services that are not your core competency. Just being honest about it.
Awesome. Absolutely love that as well. Well, that is all the time that we do have for today. We want to thank Oscar, John, Phil, and John for sharing their great insights with you all today. What an incredible and vital conversation. We also want to give a huge shout out to our partners at AWS for their support of Future Ready Schools and for supporting today's webinar. I do want to remind our viewers that information about Future Ready Schools can be found at futureready.org. We continue to challenge school district superintendents to join the over 3,500 others that have signed on to the Future Ready Pledge. We also encourage our school and district leaders to join us at one of this year's fall institutes, which can be found at futureready.org/institutes. I also want to encourage our viewers to get involved with one of our growing strands, from district leaders to technology leaders, principals, librarians, instructional coaches. We have vastly expanded the reach of Future Ready Schools in recent years. Check our private Facebook groups and ongoing activities to stay connected with those working alongside each of you throughout the nation as well. I do want to again thank our team for today as well. Thank all of you, our viewers, for joining us for this webinar. Don't forget to connect with us here at Future Ready on Twitter at Future Ready and on Facebook at facebook.com/Future Ready Schools. If you did miss any of today's conversation, it will be archived at futureready.org/webinar. We thank you again for joining us here at Future Ready Schools. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you next time.